Right, we're getting into our conversation this morning, and we're going to do that with two former cabinet secretaries. One is already here, and she's looking resplendent in yellow. Sicily Kariuki joins us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. How about you?
Very well.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. It's good to see you.
Right.
We'll talk a little bit about, a lot of the things. We're looking into the week that was. Usually they say if we're going to chart the path ahead, we need to take a look at what has happened behind us. But before we do, Dennis is going to welcome you with today's proverb. He'll tell you where that's from. We'd love to get your interpretation of it.
Yeah, we're coming from the island country of Seychelles. Its people are called Seychellois, and it's a country full of tourism simply because it's an island, beautiful beaches. And another thing that propels the economy of the country is fishing, and tuna fishing is what continues to be there. Also, it is known for offshore accounts, so a lot of people are taking their monies out there, but there is always a conversation on why everyone seems to be taking their money, especially from other African jurisdictions. And there's always a debate around why that is happening. That's a conversation for another day. But let's go to a proverb today. The noise of the sea does not stop the fish from sleeping. The noise of the sea does not stop the fish from sleeping. How would you interpret that?
Wow, interesting. The noise of the sea does not stop the fish
from sleeping.
Bringing it right home, perhaps the headlines today kind of help me interpret this a little bit, right? So it doesn't matter the noise that Kenyans are making because of the crumbling scam, we can call it that, but it won't stop Wanadendole from sleeping. He sleeps, wakes up, and goes exactly where he was to defend something which is completely gone bad, I would say. If you look at where we are as a country, 1 year and a half later, after the Gen Z's movement, I don't think that President Kipruto is spending any sleepless nights either. Things are going very bad, but, it's like business as usual. That is how I would want to interpret it for now from wearing my political lenses.
Interesting.
Of course, very interesting to then be able to look into. And even as we look at the week that was, like we said, you cast our eye back and see then, okay, what's coming in the next couple. And I guess we can segue just from what you have said. And that one of the things that we look at is the whole corruption conversation. And with what we see now with one governor right in the impeachment process, charges from the ODPP leveled against a sitting governor and a former governor, like Bungoma and Bomet. That's happening right here. And then we cannot walk away from what's happening with Shah. This is interesting because you, as a former minister, you sat in water and sanitation and irrigation. You sat in public service, youth and gender affairs. Then you sat in health as a minister. All of these things are happening as we see them. And then we want to ask the question, Sicily, what's your take of this whole corruption that is being dealt with and what's happening with a public system that's essentially supposed to safeguard the health of Kenyans that's crumbling, using your words?
Like you say, we use a side mirror to have a look at where we are coming from, but then project where it is that we are headed towards. I must say that corruption is not a new invention, as it were. We sat in those dockets right at the middle. I was in health for 2 years and a half. And it wasn't that much easier. I mean, corruption seems to be in the DNA of Kenya and Africa, if you will. But unfortunately, what seems to be commitments made to clean up what then we knew to be somewhat smaller corruption seems to have now morphed into something that is a huge mountain. It seems to be now it has become a way of life. It seems to be that, between the executive, the judiciary, the parliamentarians, and even the givers of bribes, if you will, because, it takes two to tango, seems to be they've become bolder over time. And there must be reasons why they've become bolder. One is because they don't get actually to be taken out and prosecuted the way we are seeing right now. And I must commend ODPP and EACC for actually, taking, boldly moving to actually get these governors to be answerable. How I wish that the executive would also allow for the independent organizations and institutions that are responsible as per the Constitution to do their thing without meddling. Then we'll see a little bit of care. Kenyans will be a little bit more careful and wouldn't have the kind of arrogance that we are seeing coming alongside. You know very well you're looting public money. But as if that is not bad enough, you add salt onto an injured wound. And but I guess that we are at a point where, again, Kenyans must realize they're on their own, and therefore they must take responsibility, the civic responsibility of calling it out as we see, and even getting out to demonstrate, like the Gen Z has already demonstrated. We must know we are on our own. I want to appreciate you, Ndu, and Dennis here, because you do a great job. What you do here in terms of educating Kenyans, in terms of holding those in power accountable, even just by giving, third-party opinions to be shared on this platform. And you must keep doing this. In fact, you need to aggress around it. I was a little bit discouraged, was it yesterday, must have been. I watched you and your colleagues, and you felt like you're giving up. It cannot be Duale. It couldn't have been Barasa. It couldn't have been Akumecha. And you went on and said, there must be something wrong. It cannot be a Duale thing. I don't think systems drive themselves.
Really?
Systems are driven by people. Leadership is about taking responsibility to correct. Otherwise, we would not need leaders. We would all be cabinet secretaries. Would they need one?
Do you think, based on that, do you think then that you come in and you find a mess? If you were a proper leader, if you were, I'll use the word proper leader, that you would then fix it. You would. The onus is on you to then fix it. And we can't say that it is systemic and so there's nothing you can do.
Well, I think that we can say both things. We can say systemic, because I said it's not a new invention of one Adendwale. But I think that we need to see better political will in dealing, as opposed to speaking and saying it wasn't me, and therefore it isn't me. But the cure for any problem is admitting there is a problem. What I don't enjoy currently is the denial that really there is no problem, and the institutions or the hospitals which apparently received money for having you likened it with this situation room being a maternity, a facility with even maternity and surgery rooms, and even chemo facilities, knowing very well that actually what you're doing, you have figured it out, and this is a corruption deal. This is a way of removing public money. You figured it out. So instead of coming and admitting and saying, really, Kenyans, really, truly very sorry. This is not what we had imagined, but here we are, we're going to make amends. Look at 104 billion into a system. That's not working. Suddenly not working. In my days, if I look back, actually, we were never going to spend more than 1 billion, 800 million to 1 billion max for this system.
Same thing?
Yes, because the system existed. We only needed to kind of upgrade it. How do you deal when you're in private sector? You don't throw it out and say, it cannot work, and therefore 104 billion shillings. In my days as a cabinet secretary of health, there was a proposal to have an IT system that would connect the level 4 hospitals with the national referral hospitals, and the hub was going to be Kenyatta Hospital. Then I found a bill of 4 billion to be able to do this. When I interrogated it, I became very unpopular because it wasn't going to pass. And suddenly it was actually going to be a system that would have been installed with 1 billion and less. And so I was grilled by Senate because we say corruption is collective. It can never be an individual business. And I was in Senate 12 times on record, answering why I was even questioning the spend of 4 billion shillings. And as fate would have it, I got a lot of support from my colleagues in the Attorney General's office, an ICT colleague then, and it was clear that it was going to be a fraud. Remember, I'm talking about 4 billion.
Yes, 4 billion.
SHA comes in at 104 billion. 100 billion more. 2 years later. I mean, you have to be strong to even want to defend something like this. It stinks to high heaven.
You see, we talk about at the time when you were the helm of the ministry, and you're talking about 1 billion shillings that would have been spent to upgrade the system. And here's a question where you fought the 4 billion shillings vote that was being pushed. But here we are, 104 billion shillings in, with the hope that universal healthcare would be achieved by all. Now, as we sit today and look at the mess that is the health sector in provision of the services to Mwananchi, one asks the question, is it that, because you are the CS, is it that the CS Duale is unable to look at the system and point to where the problem is, or is it that he just doesn't want to?
It becomes very, very difficult when you are acting defensive, because you then are not able to really appreciate the magnitude of the problem, let alone appreciate that there is a real problem for which you could partially take responsibility. I'm quick to note that Aden Duale may not actually be able to cure this systemic problem alone. He must call on experts from elsewhere, because when we run government and you're only a minister in one specific sector, it behoves on you to be able to call on expertise from your colleagues. Whoever is responsible for ICT and your mitandao needs to be part of resolving. The persons who are in charge of, I don't know, name it, public service, where the civil servants are not able to now access health care, need to be part of the solution. That's why we popularly talk about a whole government approach. The president and the executive office of the president must be at the middle of resolving. Because remember, the person who Kenyans elected to be the president and lead us forward as a country is President Ruto. So it cannot be a Duale alone problem. Now, is he listening to the technical people speak? I'm not very sure, because, when I listen to one of the PS, Dr. Oluga, speak about, and, take Kenyans through what really it means and how the money is getting lost, I was very, very pleased. I really felt like this is where politics meets with technical expertise, because he's able to actually break it down into more bites, and we're able to see where the gaps are. Then I do think the attitude of Kenyans may be too helpless to do anything anyway. So we continue day in, day out, 3 weeks now, and we are not seeing the end to it. Calls on President Ruto to be able to come in now. What I heard the president say, it must have been yesterday, was that because we have this very robust ecosystem, that is why these things are coming to the fore.
Because it's been digitized.
Yeah,
Please. And then today we wake up and 104 billion system has crumbled, and therefore we've resorted to manual verification of claims. This is where the devil will be. You can tell Kenyans, this is where the devil will be. Manual verification of claims. Give us a break.
Wow. We're going to come back and we're going to look into it then, because in that situation, what would you do? You have been in a situation like this before, whereby, again, by your own admission, 12 times before the Senate, to have to answer questions. How do you deal with that? You've also said that the first thing towards solving a problem is to admit that there's a problem in the first place. If we see the admittance of that, perhaps we'll say we're on the right track. We will come back, and at this point, going to welcome as well former Minister Kipruto Arap Kirwa. He's here with us this morning. Waziri, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing well. I thank God I'm still around.
We do too. It's good to see you. The Southern Bypass held you at some point.
Yes, so of course, I have to admit, I woke up late.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Well, there you go, Sicily. Sicily has told us that if there's a problem, if you admit that there's a problem, we're halfway towards solving it.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for being here this morning, having into conversations and looking into the week that was. and as we have this conversation, Sicily, all of these things have happened in this week alone, and we've not even scratched the surface of it all. And so I guess we could just jump in with you, Wazir, as well, that we're looking at the dealings of the Shah system, which then gives into an overall problem whereby we talk about, unfortunately, the mismanagement of systems in the country. Are people just being anti-political when we talk about these issues? When we talk about Shah, when we talk about waking up on a Friday morning and you're being told that 104 billion shilling system, unfortunately, is not going to work so well. Are people just being sensational and political, or are we staring in the face of a gargantuan problem?
Well, it's a very serious problem because, this regime, since it started decimating institutions and not allowing institutions to operate independent of interference from the executive. This therefore means that no institution works without almost some kind of micromanagement from the president himself. You remember, even this system, we could have used less than $1 billion, and we redo the former NHIF. But now we have to spend 104 billion shillings, and we are not seeing evidence of that kind of efficiency that we were told at the beginning of time. So people are not being sensitive. At times I feel as Kenyans, we are becoming insensitive to the problems on our face. And we are becoming almost unable to deal with the person responsible for that. Imagine all these problems are happening and he says we are doing very well. And I don't know, when he talks about all these things, including the economy, where are we doing well unless he himself is doing well?
You see, when you're having this discussion, as the country continues to talk about this, there has been the idea that Kenyans are just noisemakers. All we do is just complain and not offer solutions. That is, regardless of the fact that those that are in the office today bear the responsibility of making sure the system that they introduce to Kenyans, systems that Kenyans are paying for, ought to work. And as we talk about the president's promise and the call for corruption to be met and to be fought at all levels, one asks the question, why is it that, fine, we'll talk about MPs and whatnot, fine, we'll deal with that corruption there, but we're not talking about this corruption in Shah. Is it any different?
No, it's not different. It's only that the president is creating some kind of narrative he wants to run with towards the next general election. Even the people he says he's going to jail, he's not a jailer himself. But if he allowed institutions to operate from the beginning of time, some of these misdeeds would not have taken place. He should have led by example, making sure that nothing is done that is some blemish. But when he showed at the beginning of time that public opinion never mattered, notwithstanding the fact that it's a constitutional matter, it's not just in a normal law. It's a constitutional matter for public participation to be respected. And he almost waved off issues of public participation. Remember even the Adani deal and many other deals, including the fact that the e-citizen, we are told about 10, 11 billion shillings have been lost. Nobody knows where that money is. So what he's doing is simple. He might jail even some of his ministers. He might jail some of the senators. He might jail some of the MPs in the process of trying to regain some public confidence as a crusader fighting against corruption. And perhaps Kenyans will say we'd rather have one thief instead of many thieves, so that they leave the president himself to be the prime thief and the rest of the people are supposed to be jailed. It is a charade. It is not a genuine concern over the issues of corruption. Otherwise, you would have stopped corruption from the beginning. And if that's what Sicily said earlier, I'm just repeating because that's the reality.
Sicily, I wanted to pick you on the same. You see, the president has said he's now forming this body to fight corruption and whatnot. And members of parliament as well, on the other side, have said, you need to give us the evidence. If anything, we will summon you to the house to tell us who are these people that you gave the bribe and whatnot. And we've also had conversations around to the run-up to the impeachment of the former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, and conversations on how monies from the executive were given to members of parliament to impeach him. And as the president talks about the fight against corruption, there is this spell against him in terms of his willingness to fight corruption. Just how is that making it difficult for Kenyans to trust that the president can lead the fight against corruption?
Dennis, you know that the trust deficit between Kenyans and President Ruto and his government is at an all-time low, for reasons that he has brought upon himself. Because when you make commitments like he did under his manifesto, and you hardly have scratched the surface, and you start heaping other, promises, and giving imaginary report cards that really you're actually moving, then the trust deficit can only get deeper. So I want to agree with my colleague. I don't think that Kenyans are actually being sensational. It's real. We interact with them. We don't live in the ivory tower. We interact with them routinely. Kenyans are hurting. And they're hurting because their hopes were very, very high as per the commitments that President Ruto made when he was campaigning. But as if it is not bad enough that he's not able to fulfill the commitments, we have seen corruption in the grandest form that Kenya has ever witnessed. And as if that is not bad enough, we have seen arrogance on top of this and denial that is beyond measure. And as if that is not bad enough, we go spending resources in what, in my view, and the view of Kenyan citizens, ordinary, is actually not where we should be investing. 22 million per month bill to peer to make us look like we are angels is not a welcome investment. Not when capitation to schools has not been delivered as schools begin to open now. With the kind of corruption and public servants also having to pay out of pocket. I spoke to one yesterday who wanted a bit of assistance. They thought I'm still able to speak to somebody in the Ministry of Health because they're seeing a doctor. The bill for the doctor is catered for under whatever it is. But beyond that, sort out on your medication, fix any other specialized tests that you may be doing, and we are up to here. So somebody who is working and is supposed to be motivated to give us a service. I mean, if I was that public servant, I would actually withhold my services. So we came in on a huge promise. It's not being delivered. We are saying lies on top of lies on top of lies. And sometimes I really listen to the president when he's speaking to Kenyans, and I really wonder, is it for real? I mean, is this for real? What are we missing? So again, I come back to say, and I think it's been said, it's one of now the proverbs you need to be putting here all the time. When a hyena wants to eat their child, what do? They say they smell like a goat. This is what President Ruto is doing. I think there are many people smelling like a goat, as just has been articulated, because he needs to find a way of detoxing and cleaning himself up so that he comes out and looks like he's Mr. Clean and continue cheating Kenyans. But I can tell you the interactions I have with Kenyans, at least the ones that are close to me, he may eat all the mbusis. No, I think the ship has set sail. People feel cheated. People feel like you don't care. People feel like you can keep talking, but finally it is my way or the highway. This is how Kenyans are being treated. While Kenyans are resilient, we are. God willing, he'll see us through with the economic struggles and social struggles, the abuse around rights and, blatant abuse of the Constitution. We will get through this in another 23 months, close to now, and Kenyans will have another chance to be able to come and say, so where do we go from here? It's
interesting that you say the solution to all of this is to go back to the ballot as the Constitution provides for every 5 years. And we've just come out of Katiba at 15. Katiba Day was on the 27th of August. And even as you asked that question, constitutionally, we have to then ask, where do these politics, as we see, you've both been cabinet ministers, you've both played right in the center of the executive and how things happen. And in as much as we say that an individual and their character makes an administration, some of the things more or less are the same. How then do you play constitutionalism with the politics of the day, coming from a place where you then must execute no matter what. But then we have to ask the question, in the minds of a cabinet minister, because we're trying to understand the psychology here, because then now maybe we can understand the action. That does it actually play in your mind that this work we are doing it for Kenya, or are we just playing the politics to get by the day?
Well, there is something very interesting. It depends on who is the president. Remember, President Kibaki had the fortunate situation of presiding over the leadership of this country under two constitutions, the old constitution and the new constitution. And while he presided over the destiny of Kenya for 8 years under the old constitution, he was able to demonstrate that the constitution is important, but leadership is actually more important than any other issue. Leadership in the sense that you must allow people do what they do best. And when he gave us the opportunity to be ministers, we were not better than him in terms of running government. He had run government for many years. But he allowed us to interact with the officers, deal with the issues that we understood. We just go to him to brief him on the issues that we feel needs his attention and needs support for purposes of making the way forward. But he never called us to tell us, do this, do this. I remember he made 3 calls to me. 2 of them I can remember vividly. It is one, when there was a food situation, he called me and he told me, can we discuss this issue? The country is going through under a lot of strain. Then I booked an appointment. I went, I saw him with the officers of my ministry. The other one is when my colleague, Lina Chebik-Limo, moved out of government to support the referendum. She called me from Uganda. I was somewhere in Karen. And on the line, somebody told me the president wants to talk to you. I talked to him. He told me, okay, what has happened in Auyu Mama? And I did not even know who the mama is. So in the process, I understood it was Lina Chebik-Limo. Then I told him, let me deal with the situation. I will get back to you. He said, that's okay. And I can't remember the third one. I cannot remember what it was. 3 calls in 5 years as his minister. The rest of it, we either interact in the cabinet or when we make a request to go and brief him. This other president that we are dealing with now is a manager of every ministry. He has said it himself, that he knows more than the PSS. He knows more than the ministers. When somebody makes that kind of statement and is not superhuman, then you realize there is a problem. Even when I was in the ministry and Sicily was one of my officers, senior officers as a managing director, I never knew more than the tea board that he was running, the tea industry that she was running. I had to consult her for me to understand the details of what is happening. And they had to give them the latitude of freedom to operate as they see it fit, unless something has gone beyond their capacity as an institution. That is the way management should be done. But management here is interfere with every institution, from judiciary, legislature, even independent commissions, and even within the executive. You know everything about any ministry. That is where we feel there is something wrong.
Sicily, we talk about the way Mheshimiwa has talked about the running of a government and the president being up there. If you look at the cabinet, the PSs, and we come to even the civil servants, it is part of the entire system, one engine feeding into another system for these vehicles to move. But here is a situation where cohesiveness has to be there. People have to speak the same language. People have to move the same direction, because there is no way a vehicle can move with 2 gears at the same time. If it's forward, it's forward. It's reverse, it's reverse. So how critical is it today, as we talk about Katiba at 15, that we have a government for the people, by the people? Because it is the people who are feeding the government for the government to deliver back to them. How critical is it, as we talk about Katiba at 15? Have we realized that?
I do think that it is absolutely very critical that, like you so well demonstrate, government operates like a conveyor belt, so to speak, and moving in the same direction. What we seem to be having as we celebrate Katiba at 15 is that we are living in the parliamentary system that was before, where the president, a lot of power was centralized around one person, the president, and therefore if he got drunk with power, would have to sing because it was jump how high because of the system. And the reason we discarded that system to adopt the presidential system is so that the president is directly elected by the people, the Kenyan people, and that there is a clear separation of power between the various arms of government, being the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, and the independent commissions. Now, we seem to be watering down that and negating all that. And that is why the independent commissions, including the IBC, including the Office of the ODPP, including the intelligence and parliament, seem to all be subject to the presidential whims and his direction. But come back to the public service itself. Unless and until the political head, and the presidential system again anticipated that the political head, never mind appointed by the president, ought not to be a proper politician, so to speak. The Adandwales of this world and people who've held political offices, with the kind of magnitude that they have. And it was anticipated that we are going to professionalize the public service by getting technocrats and people who are able to exercise leadership with some degree of independence so that then we could improve on service delivery. 15 years later, we are back. Reverse gear, and we are moving with a lot of speed. Now, what we need to realize is that the targets that are set in terms of service delivery, be it quality, be it speed, be it efficiency, be it spend or money that is going into service delivery, we seem to be again at an all-time low in terms of the quality and the parameters that I've described. Fast forward, how do we get back to what it is we needed to do as per the Katiba at 15, is to come back and say we must respect the tenets of the current constitution. But before we have even taken a review of whether we are moving forward with the Katiba or not, I hear again some very disturbing conversations around referendum to introduce offices and so that we have more people in power and remove a bit of what seems to really have been working. And therefore, again, I come back and say, Kenyans, you're on your own.
Are we on our own? Are we on our own?
Well, we are on our own in the sense that we need to rise above the comfort zone. In the sense that let's not take it for granted that Ruto was given to us by divine intervention or divine providence. He is an individual in Kenya, just as mortal as any one of us, and as frail as any one of us, who appropriated power through some deceit and promises that were actually, even if we as me had taken over, those promises would have collapsed us. But thank God he took over, and he has proven himself that after all, they were empty premises. But let us go back to the issue of government, how it operates. You see, cabinet is supposed to be a clearinghouse. Clearinghouse in the sense that for us to move in the same direction, there is the expertise across the board. Even when ministers or politicians, there is a measure of experience, a measure of expertise across the board, and therefore, if you are prosecuting your paper, you bring before your colleagues, and they're able to dissect the paper, give you a direction that they feel is not going to interfere with any other ministry. For example, if you are in the Ministry of Agriculture and you've made certain decisions, some of those decisions may affect Ministry of Livestock, may affect Ministry of Finance, because there is the financial consideration for every action that the government engages in. So once the cabinet does approve a certain direction during our days, then you forward the information to the relevant institutions, including Parliament. And Parliament will discuss now with more experience and outside the confines of the cabinet, and advise you on the best way to take that particular issue forward. And the leverage is the president is still got an opportunity. Should he find that whatever parliament has said is not in tandem with what he believes in, he can give a memorandum for any legislation that he feels it could have been done better. And that kind of discussion was very useful. In the meantime, the Attorney General, who happens to be an ex-officio member of the cabinet, will be able to give legal advice so that we don't have a situation like the one we have today, that you pass something in the cabinet, it goes to parliament, they pass the law, and the law is vetoed by a court of law. That communication is allowed, just like any other system, to move in tandem. And the judiciary, while in the past, the president had almost override power over the other two institutions, but at least the judiciary should be able to give some kind of final advice on what has been decided and what the constitution provides. That communication should be done without a lot of unease. But you see, what is happening is that the president that we have today does not believe in any system. He pretends to be a professional in all manner of things. Remember, even the other day when he was in Pokot, he was telling us about this issue of livestock vaccination. And he was declaring he's a scientist, as if he's a scientist that we have had for the first time. Remember, what he did was Botsu. Botsu has nothing to do with vaccination of animals. Even a medical doctor may understand basic things about the dynamics of vaccination. But livestock veterinary officer will not pronounce himself on issues of human medicine, but he himself has become an expert all round. This is where the rain started beating us. We cannot even blame other institutions. It squarely lies with the top leadership, the President of the Republic of Kenya.
So the other institutions, however we want to look at them, there is a problem that in as much as we say that you start at the top, that it would appear as though wherever you look, there are problems. And where do we accord that to? Even as we look at the week that was, we see fake hospitals, we see fake patients. Before that, the Auditor General had told us about so many holes that, and this is not even from the current year, this is from 2023, 2024.
Yeah.
That when we look at education, for example, there are fake schools, there are fake students, there's fake everything. And then we still cannot find the money to send children to school. We are going into a system that is going to be resource heavy. It already is resource heavy, but still cannot find the resources to then be able to do that. There were threats and there was a bit of shake in terms of what was going to happen when it comes to the exams. We have exam heavy October, November this year, KJSCA, KEPSEA, KCSC, and then we are looking at another one for grade 9s before they go to grade 10 next year. It's an exam heavy end of year, and these are resource heavy processes or procedures that require more. But for those fundamental things, there isn't money. But you know what? There seems to be 300 billion shillings that will be used to pay retired judges and members of parliament for life. This is they themselves who are getting into this conversation with the JSC. They are the ones getting into the conversation with the SRC. It's not the president. There are people who are getting into these conversations. We will find 300 billion shillings to do that, but we cannot send the fundamental pillars of society to school.
Well, is it me or Sicily?
Sicily will go with, let's start with Sicily.
Okay.
Well, do the way you articulate fake this, fake that, fake the other. My concern now is 2027, whether we'll not have fake voters. And I think Kenyans have been told to prepare because there will be dead people and other people voting that do not exist. This is how determined we are to run this country as a fake country. But coming back to our priorities, now we are deprioritizing critical investments that will actually cater for the forward movement or progression of us as a nation. Education is so key. Health is so key. Because you recall, if you reflect, when we fought for independence 62 years ago, it was on account of three key gaps: poverty and the need to eradicate poverty, the issue of ignorance and our level of education at that point in time, and the need for us to deal with issues of ignorance and therefore get to a population that is literate and is able to actually be productive, and issues of healthcare, fighting disease, because we found ourselves with very high mortality rates at that point. And therefore those three made for us unspoken priority areas for investment for any successive governments. What we have done now, we have quickly come and decided the other administrations, 4 of them up to the 4th one headed by President Uhuru, that whatever they were investing, they didn't seem to know a thing or two. Now the Kenya Kwanza government has come to actually bring in what views to be very temporal kind of priorities, which have not come to be priority on account of public participation. And that's why when I say Kenyans are frustrated, it's because we don't understand at what point we moved away from those 3 key pillars that we inherited from ourselves as we fought for independence. Now move forward and say, so there is enough resources in Kenya today, if only we could appropriate them in the priority areas. Kenya is not a poor country, but the reason we find ourselves going back to a very high level of inequalities is because we have very, very few people who are very affluent. They are stealing all the money, the resources. They own all the land that we possibly could own around. They don't even drive on the roads the way we do. They don't get late, like my boss here, Arap Kirwa, because they use choppers to fly and to even commute from their villages back into town. And therefore, it's not that we do not have resources. We actually have a lot of resources, but we are investing in the wrong places. A county I love where I come from, Nyandarua, feeds Nairobi, but right now we are struggling to move food from the farms to the marketplace because of the kind of roads that we find ourselves in. We are stuck there. We are in a hole.
So this is not a story. I've been to Nyandarua actually. Like you say, resource rich, resource heavy, and feeds other parts of the nation.
Absolutely.
So this is not a myth that it is impossible for a lot of farmers to get their products to the market because of the state of roads. This is a true situation today.
Not just true, but I want you to leave it and come with me one of the weekends. It's a very, very sorry state because we are even carrying caskets to go and bury people on our shoulders. Right? It is that bad. And here, because we haven't quite looked at devolution, here is where I stopped being proud. I fought for Katiba myself in 2010. I moved around, popularizing it because I believed it had good intentions. But we have devolved corruption so that even at the county level, instead of fixing the feeder small roads, which was the intention of devolution, we are actually perhaps finding ourselves in some counties in a worse situation than we were. Now, we devolved some aspects of healthcare, for example. While we see what SHA is doing here, I can confirm to you we do not even have medication in the rural hospitals, which are under the care of county structures, as it were. As to whether we devolved staff in a rush without setting guardrails, it remains my concern. But even where we had set guardrails, I was a principal secretary for agriculture when we unbundled and devolved agriculture services, including the agricultural training centers, agricultural machinery, and equipment that were then in the hands of the Ministry of Agriculture, where we both served. But what we did, although we really had even the standard set and proper guardrails for the governors to take over and implement, the whole thing has collapsed. We no longer have extension services in the villages. We no longer have machinery services for agriculture. We can't support our farmers. We no longer have, it's just a mess. So while sometimes we think when we standardize and give protocols for implementation that it will fall in place as anticipated or as envisaged, everything falls and rises on leadership. And therefore that's why you see there's disparity between governors who are apparently doing reasonably well, using the same parameters, and some who are not doing some very hopeless work. And that's why they need to be taken to court in a hurry. And they need to be more, not just the 2. Yes, because they've gone to handle public resources as if it was really their money. Yes.
Well, so you see, when you look at Kenya's history, especially at independence, there are three things that the country was focusing on, and they were disease, poverty, and ignorance. And if you just look at what that corresponds to, if you talk about disease, it's healthcare. Talk about poverty, it's improving the economy. You talk about ignorance, education. These were priority areas at the time of independence.
Yes.
You look at over 60 years later, today we talk about a healthcare system that has failed. You talk about education that is on its knees. You talk about an economy that is literally begging to be revived. Why do I say that? You look at some of the policies that have been put in place, and it is difficult for people to run businesses in the country. It is difficult to survive in the country today. And you look at what we are spending on vis-a-vis the results, one asks the question, what are we doing? I know we're going to top of the hour, but are our priorities in the right place?
Well, I think there are two major problems. One problem is the inability to raise the necessary revenue because there are so many pilferage areas. This therefore means that the 4 trillion shillings that we are budgeting for, we are not able to raise all the money, not because people are refusing to pay taxes, but because even the tax collectors are taking away some of this money before it gets to the kitty. This means if we are expecting to raise about 3 trillion, we raise less than that because there are so many routes that money disappears. The second problem is the issue that you mentioned earlier, the issue of fake institutions. You remember fake schools, they have coupled about, through capitation, 3.6 billion. That is money that could have been used to do many other things. Now you've seen of late now that there are fake hospitals or hospitals that just exist on paper, and you go there, you find an institution getting about 60 million shillings, and yet a level 3 hospital, a level 4, level 5 in some of the counties have not gotten money from the beginning of the year. This does not mean that the priority is wrong. It means that we are deliberate. We don't want to do anything to achieve the targets that we even gave ourselves as Kenya Kwanza.
It's like we're living in the twilight zone almost. There's this absurd reality, outside reality, almost. And I hazard a thought, was it Sicily? And is it possible that one can imagine? I saw an audit that was done that the number of unfinished projects in the country, those that had begun and for which hundreds of billions of shillings have already been spent across board and are lying, unfinished, and the money that has then been spent on other projects to begin then is unfathomable. Would we imagine a situation whereby the legacy of an administration would be, for example, which unfortunately a lot of these old projects are wrapped around, corruption essentially has wrapped around their fingers? Would it be possible to imagine that the legacy of an administration would be to complete anything that was pending and have those working? That would be your legacy, that I came in to finish all of these things that, hung on the shoulders of Kenyans for decades before you even do anything else, and leave the room open for the next person to come in and then continue with development. Is that something that can be fathomed?
And unfortunately for politicians, it doesn't work that way. If you are a bureaucrat or somebody who really wants to work so that there is an impact and a legacy that will follow you, then that can happen. But for the Kenyan politicians, that doesn't happen. And I'll tell you why. It's just because the persons who initiated the project, especially the capital heavy project, it's possible they had a deal right in there. And therefore, they took their deal. And therefore, when you come in, you look at it and say they took and ran off with it. What is innate for me? And because your mindset as a politician is to steal and enrich yourself, then you must start a new project so that there's a deal right there in for you. I like to call you on the Mau Summit Road, a project that I think was near complete, and I think documents exchanged, and I think it was a PPP project just before the fourth administration left office. I am made to understand that whoever was going to be the partner has been paid a huge amount of money and asked to leave so that we bring in our person so that then we can
Another
eat.
huge amount of money can be paid.
So read it, not because it's not common sense. It looks very basic common sense, but it's because what is in it for us? Tutakula nini? What is in it for us? It happens in counties. It's happening at the national level to a magnitude that is mind-boggling. Until and unless, again, Kenyans have a civic responsibility. When this manifesto is thrown around you and somebody is carrying some Quran or some Bible and something and they're looking like, an angel straight from heaven, you, the voter, have responsibility to ask them before you tell us about hustler narratives. Tell us and commit on a social contract that you're going to complete the projects that are already there that we know. I keep on talking about a road that is right in front of my home in the village. A road that was started by the fourth administration. And 5 kilometers of a tarmac road, it's told, immediately Kenya Kwanza took over because they wanted to look like they were inventing and therefore lie to the population around my village that it was really their project. And truth be told, after making sufficient noise, the deputy president 2 months ago came and launched. Remember, we had no reason launching it. It was already going, but it was stopped. So he came and relaunched, or rather launched, like it was a new project. A few weeks later, it has stalled again.
Okay.
Right? I guess there isn't anything in there for them.
So there was no intention. I have to ask, across the boards of leadership, everybody swears an oath. You essentially swear an oath. That's what you do. You take an oath to essentially protect the Constitution and live the Constitution through your position at the very basic level. Whether you are a member of the county assembly, member of parliament, whether you're a senator, governor, right to the president, you swear that the Constitution will be protected and everything therein it. When that is happening, are you aware of what you're swearing, and that there is a responsibility that is held for you to live out the tenets of that oath to the people of the country? Or is it fanfare? I know it's an exciting day, you got a job,
Well, I think many people take it as a ceremony that will usher them into a position of leadership. They do not really look at the philosophical foundation of that swearing in, because swearing in is actually a measure of commitment that I'm going to stick to the Constitution and I'm going to do everything within my powers and my capacity that is right to the people of this country. Now, going back to the issue of what is the problem with so many stalled projects, apart from what Sicily has said, which I say it's right, because the project is lucrative at the beginning, because that is where people exchange some kind of goodies, and the people presiding over that project will be expecting at stages of monitoring to be getting something small to augment on what they have already taken from the beginning. But there is also the other issue that the public should also be socialized to understand that it is important. It is not, as you said at the beginning, it is not how many projects you've started. It should be how many projects have you completed, including those of your predecessor. I see many governors today, they are struggling to go through the projects they have started and to finish the projects their predecessors had started, because they have all manner of reasons. Because the public believes they measure you on the number of projects you have started and not the projects you have completed. So you'll find that it's a hospital they cannot complete, and they want to start another project within the same vicinity, serving the same people, without completing the previous project. That is where the problem is. The second issue is that you cannot legislate over bad manners. Bad manners is a product of inherent capacity of an individual. Within, it is actually intrinsic position of an individual that they behave in certain ways, and even if you are the best of laws or the best institutions like the matter of the Constitution, bad manners cannot be reined in by the law. It can be reined in by some kind of social reengineering of our country, so that we understand what does it mean to be called you are corrupt. What does corruption mean? Because even in some areas, and I can assure you, without having any negative feelings about certain communities, in some communities corruption is a very ingenious way of getting resources, because for them the government is an alien body. Because at the beginning, during the colonial days, the government was a colonial government, so it was not their government. So even at independence, when Mzee Kenyatta took over the office, the government belonged to those who are in government. And at times, to the extent that the tribes, the tribe that the president came from, the government belonged to them. Even today, some people will still tell me, he's a Rekalieno.
Yeah.
Just because I'm a Kalenjin, like the president. So this is an alien body.
Yeah.
So if you are getting something from the government, you are a very ingenious fellow. You are doing very well. If you've been in government for 20 years, the way I was as a member of parliament, and I don't have anything to show, then I was not gifted. I do not understand how to stay well. Some people are elected or ejected out of parliament because there is no evidence of some lagis around them, because they don't demonstrate that. They say, kama hajajisaidia, how does he expect to assist us? He himself has not improved on his own status.
And you see, Waziri, you bring in a very important subject, because remember, as we were getting to the 2022 elections, there was a narrative. We had the dynasties and the hustlers.
Yeah.
And at that point was it was created to appear as though the then presidential candidate and Uhuru Kenyatta belonged to these club of boys who have really oppressed the country for a very long time. Fast forward to 2025, and we see the other dynasty is now working together with the hustler. And one asks the question, even as we have all this discussion on the political manners, whether it is good or bad manners, where do we draw the line and say, it is time for politics has ended, we need to see you deliver? And there's a question that has been asked by one Richard Maina, and he's asking the question, at what point does politics stop and delivery starts? Because all you keep hearing is, give us time, we will deliver. At what point does the citizenry start asking the question, we want to see results, stop politicking?
I think we have all sinned, and the voters are equally responsible for the sins at the position and the place we find ourselves as a country. You entertain nonsense, you entertain drama, and you know very well actually you're being taken for a ride. You're given promises but has no capacity to push back and ask how now. Huge things that don't look practical. So the voter, I think, is going to take more responsibility going forward, is my hope. You, the media houses, are going to take on an increasing burden of civic education. The people responsible to educate the voters are going to be a bit more responsible. The church, in the case of 2021-22, which opened doors and convinced their followers that we are right, it is our moment, will also equally take responsibility. We, the leaders who are fortunate to get platforms, i.e. what you've given us today, must keep talking and talking truth to power. And the persons who are actually going to be looking for votes out there will equally need to be responsible. I was just thinking, might we be looking for a Lee, the Singaporean founding prime minister, Lee Kuan Yew? Might we be looking for that moment for Kenya today? Because if we knew very well that you're actually going not to be ashamed if you are caught up with corrupt practices. And corruption here is from lying knowingly and that you don't deliver, that you're actually going to be exposed. Anything that you've taken will be taken away from you.
And you will go to jail.
We could actually take you to jail. You could even be shot. Might we be facing that moment? Might it be what we need then to start socializing our people and our voters as we move forward? So that even as you go to that office, you know that is not going to be an office where you are going to enrich yourself. You know it's a place of privilege to make a difference for the people who've put you there.
Former Chief Justice Willie Mutunga talks often about alternate leadership. In this case, it's not alternate leadership like who's the next person. Alternate leadership being a different kind of leadership whereby you say, we've tried this, it hasn't worked. So is the place now where you say, should we then have a benevolent dictator, which more or less is what Lee Kuan Yew was. Everybody gives examples from here to, the kitchen sink about what he did and what he didn't do. But do you know what? There are people who are flogged in the street if you litter in Singapore.
Yeah.
There are people who go to jail if you steal one item from an office where you had responsibility. So we talk about that and we give the examples. There are people in government today who sleep on the examples of Lee Kuan Yew. But do we know what it is that was actually done in that administration for you to then use the examples that you're able to use today? Are we ready to go the full hog? And is that the alternate leadership perhaps that needs to be considered? And that segues for us into this final part of this discussion, whereby we say 2027 is coming. People have said, choose me, pick me. I am the one who's going to lead you across the, whatever it, in this case, the bridge, the river. But is it alternate leadership? Do you need a recycling of the same people to deliver a different result? Or do you need a complete overhauling of a systemic way of doing things that has not worked? We'll take it from both of you. We'll start with you, Waziri.
Well, it's supposed to be a blend of some kind, because it should be the role of young Turks, and also in combination with the older guards. You remember President Kibaki had been a vice president, had been a minister, and he was part of the old stock. But he had something intrinsic about him, that he believed that democracy is not about me. Democracy is about me accepting that other people can do better than me. And therefore, I will multiply my effort through the capacity of others. And that's why he allowed independence of ministers, such that you could make a decision as long as you are not ultra-vires the law, you are allowed to make that decision as a minister. Number two, I strongly believe that what we should be funneling out is a team of individuals who, if one of them is picked as a presidential candidate, will know that he is one among the best. And therefore, he has to deal with the rest of his colleagues as a team. But there is no single individual who can do everything if he does not have a strong team around himself. And really, more important is for us to rethink the Constitution again. Why do we have this Constitution? At times I forgive the president because he himself was not in support of the current Constitution. So when he adulterates the Constitution, when he abrogates the Constitution, it is because he never even read it. He just opposed it at the expediency of politics because he wanted to look different, he wanted to join the church, and he got 2.6 million votes. And the same church almost proposed that he was going to be the president for the churchgoers or the Christians. And there he is. He still calls himself a Christian, but what he does is very unchristian. Unchristian in the sense that when people are dying in hospitals, and you know they are fake hospitals, and you are still telling us this Shah is going to succeed, that is not only illegal, but it is immoral. And therefore, it goes against the basic tenets of the church. And finally, on this particular issue, I will repeat, we need to do social reengineering of our society. So that today, we should not be talking about voting for this person because he's one of us. I say this because when I get into Kalenjin forums, they want to defend him just because he's a Kalenjin, like the way I am, but they are not defending him on the basis of strength. And they are vilifying the other institution, the other regimes that have been here on the basis that when so-and-so was in power, there was no must go. When Moi was in power, there was must go. For me, even President Moi, under the old constitution, is an angel in terms of the way he governed this country. Because whatever he was doing, even detention without trial, was within the constitution. But this, the current fellow is doing things that are not in the constitution. They are illegal, they are immoral, but he wants us to Christian him that he's one of us, and therefore we vote for him. What we need to do is to remove ourselves. Whoever is going to be the next president, it doesn't matter. It could be from any tribe of the 43 tribes of Kenya, but he must understand he is one among individuals who have accepted this is the way we are going.
Waziri Sicily, is it time to drain the swamp? Everybody who wants to be president or not has been in the system right now. Everybody who is running around the country saying, give me an opportunity, has been there before. Been that, done that, bought the T-shirt. They've done it or tried to do it. Should we look at alternate leadership? We are inching closer to 2027, and there is an uprising amongst people who say we are not going to allow this happen any longer. Also realizing the power of the vote and education that comes with it, not just putting a vote down in the box, but then accompanying that with the knowledge and understanding of what this representation does for you. But is it time to get everything out and start afresh?
You know, if draining the swamp is what is going to heal this country, so be it. I'm, however, a little bit cautious to say that just because, and I've said it before, just because we are accusing parliamentarians for being corrupt, I do want to confirm they are good members of parliament right there. And therefore, they shouldn't be sacrificed just because they happen to be members of parliament. We've served in offices, high offices, and we got away with our heads high. Yet, monies and bribes were brought our way. It's not that you mean. I have gone through parliamentary vetting on 2 occasions personally. Colleagues of mine would confirm they have been asked for money by members of parliament. Nobody asked for a penny from me. Both occasions. Now, we have been privileged to also be given a chance to serve. And in my own case, President Uhuru said to me, I'm putting you to dockets where there are big budgets. Careful, it's not your money. Otherwise, you're going to be jailed and I'm not going to be able to help you. And therefore, you have...
He said this to you personally?
Absolutely. Part of my brief was here. I'm getting you to dockets which are troubled. They are big budgets. It's not your money. I document that because it became my rallying call for my teams. And therefore, if you thought we were going to play ball and bring envelopes to me and briefcases, and they tried, really they tried. And this is why I had to go through 2 attempts of impeaching me, because I refused to partake of their bad manners. And therefore, the cartels always, there is a price you pay every time you don't play ball. And therefore, if right from the top, that is a messaging that you're getting as you're moving into cabinet, it really behoves on you that you must be, exercise fidelity to that, because that is the expectation. But it has to meet with my value system. Because for me, I know when you're given a chance to serve as if there will be no tomorrow, and serve as if you're serving God. And therefore, leave an impact, however small, but go home with your name. Because when everything is done, it is the name that I carry on the streets and in the supermarkets that matters for me today. And therefore, I'm quick to come and say, draining the swamp and draining everybody because they served within an administration, I think would also not be exercising responsibility from the point of the voters themselves. What we need now, we need to come and ask, how did we get here? How did we get here? There's a value system, and this is where the voters come in, that when you come around with the biggest vehicle and a lot of money that you're dishing out, then you're our person. If you belong to my ethnic tribe, then you're my person, regardless of what is between your ears. How did we get here? We got here by also saying, for example, some of the aspirations that are contained in the Constitution. we looking for diversified leadership, and that is why the 2/3 gender rule and a place for women in leadership was envisaged, because they give an alternative also perspective to decision making, which are more or less complementary to what the male gender would give, and that I think needs to be respected. So if alternative again or draining the swamp means getting women to be at the top in their bigger numbers, I will celebrate that. That's a moment Kenya is waiting for. Getting diversity from a point of younger generation, being also around the table without fighting too hard for it, so be it. How do we get the women and youth to be around the table at the top offices? It is making the campaign period shorter, less expensive, and not monetizing the way it is right now. Right now, you don't have money, then you're out through the door. Right now, you don't belong to that ethnic group, you're out through that door. But we have a moment that we're gonna change the way we play our politics today.
And the way we play our politics today as we approach 2027, there is a body that is centered to it, and that is IEBC. We know already what Kenyans are saying about IEBC, its formation, and all the intrigues in there. But that notwithstanding, it is the body we have, and delivering to Kenyans, it must. And that starts with the limitation of boundaries. There is the by-elections that are coming. There is civic education that is needed in the country. So as you speak about 2027, IEBC, and the politics around it, what should Kenyans expect, and what must IEBC do to reclaim its name?
Well, IEBC has gotten a bad name for almost the last couple of years or decades, partly because of misadventures of those in the leadership of IEBC, and partly because of interference by the executive. This therefore means that IEBC has a lot of work to do to make sure that they get out of this without a lot of blemish. But it's also important that properly, with proper civic education, to across the board, and also with information even from media houses and other channels that can provide that information, Kenyans, we thank God, are very intelligent. And they are very literate to a large extent. Despite all these problems that we are facing with, our human resource has still got requisite capacity to do many things. And I don't doubt Kenyans, if they are given the right information, they will get out of this situation. The second issue is that I'm happy. The current regime stands no chance. Whether they are going to steal 2 million votes, 3 million votes, there is a huge gap between them and the alternative leadership. And this therefore means that we want to encourage them not to steal, because you may steal and at the end of the day you will have lost the elections. I remember there was a case in Baringo some time back when I was in primary school, where the person who wanted to win made sure that there were 14,000 votes in that constituency, made sure that he had crossed 7, only for the other guy to get 8,000. And therefore, there were more people who voted in that constituency than the people who are registered as voters. So don't do that, because you will tell us in this particular province, in this particular region, we have gotten 3 million votes, when we know the population of that region is less than 2 million votes. You cannot have more voters than the people living in that particular area. So some of the issues, and also I want to advise the current regime, even the fake registration of people from outside the country. And it was not for the Somali community that rule was there. Even as somebody coming from a border district, you are required to go through the same vetting,
Yes.
So that you are not from Uganda, you are not from Tanzania, like the people of Narok, the people of Kajiado. But when the president went there, he made it look like it's the people of the Northeastern who have been sidelined by not being allowed to register as Kenyans by going through the vetting process. The vetting process has been an aspect that has been there. But more important, even in Trans Nzoia, some of my colleagues tried to get people from Uganda. To import 2,000 people from Uganda
to vote in an election,
in an election and take them back is more expensive than using the same resources to mobilize your own voters. So to bring people, even 1 million votes from outside this country, is going to be a logistical nightmare. Some of the people, because of the weather, might have moved away from the border. And on the day of voting, there will still be so many kilometers inside.
We say it as though it's an option that can be considered. And
people are doing it.
It should be ludicrous to even imagine that such a thing can
but it's happening.
be done.
It's happening.
Just because it's happening doesn't mean that we almost accept it as a way of doing things. And what happens to patriotism?
I'm not condoning. I'm just advising them.
Yeah.
That you lose elections, whether you import 1 million votes or 2 million votes. Mm-hmm. You lose this election unless there is another miracle.
Solutions is what we should be heading to, regardless of the situation. With what we've spoken about, and just I guess for a roundup with both of you, from what we've spoken about today, are we? Is Kenya on the path whereby you can say there are solutions, you can take them, and you can use them towards an end?
I mean, there are solutions to every problem. There is a solution, but like I said, you have to have the right mindset. You must want to resolve. And in this case, the people that have been given the leadership mantle at the highest level must want to go back to the drawing boards and listen to Kenyans a bit more keenly. Listen to understand why are Kenyans unhappy. Not listen because you want to do some PR games, which is what we've been treated to the last 3 years. So listen to understand. Once you understand, the solutions will be right there. Kenyans are asking for very little. We are patriotic. We're asking for you to keep your promise, deliver what it is you promised in matters development, deliver as per the Constitution, respect rights or manner of rights that are enshrined and were negotiated and are now in Katiba 2010. Do not kill people. Allow yourself to listen to dissenting voices. It may come to save you. Do not kill young people when they express themselves. It is their right to express themselves. Do not scatter us when we associate as we please. It is our right that we negotiated and fought for. Develop the country in matters economy. Stop stealing. Minimize. If you must steal, iba kidogo to live. If you must, but we are encouraging you not to steal because I think you've taken out enough for now. But also speak to Kenyans like an empathetic leader will. Exercise emotional intelligence as you have a conversation with us. We ain't foolish. Stop lying. Don't cheat us. I think we've been treated to enough of that. And if you do all this, therein, I think a solution that may make it a little bit comfortable for you in 2027. And importantly, don't plan or plot to rig the elections in 2027. That is to the leadership. To you, the ordinary Kenyan, you know what democracy is about. You have a social contract with the people you put in office. They don't deliver, get them home at 8 o'clock on the 8th of August, 2027. And be careful who else you bring in the place of the ones that will be going home. And to you, the rest of us who are supporting by way of giving us your assets, including the media houses, please don't tire. You will also be intimidated. I know you will, because people want you to speak and join the choir for President Ruto. Don't, because Kenya needs you more than anything, any other time before. To you, the international community, keep watch. Just thinking that somebody is watching helps us to behave more responsibly. You, the women, especially the young people, offer yourselves as alternative leadership when we get there. I at least... Sicily, Kariuki, if I get favor with the ground, I will give it a shot again, 2027, because we must reorganize the governance template for us as the country, both at the devolved units, but also at the national level.
Indeed. And finishing up with you, Waziri Kirwa.
Well, that's very interesting. She has summarized so well. You know, she's my student and she has done better than the teacher. But suffice to say the following, that Kenyans, let's not lose hope. There is still a lot of opportunity for us to change the direction through which this country is going to make a lot of success. I will repeat the fact that we have a country that has very strong human resource capacity, and such. Let us not assume that every politician is going to be as bad as the ones you've known. The third issue is that let's do a lot of civic education. Many people almost give up that there is nothing we can do because the elections are going to be rigged. Rigging an election needs some modicum of intelligence. You just don't, and we do not ascribe intelligence to one side of the equation. Well, those of us on the alternative ticket, we are very vigilant, and we are making sure that every day we move towards making sure that our votes are going to be secured.
Indeed.
Thanks to the Gen Z who have come out and they have demonstrated that they are going to vote this time round. Remember, in the last election, 8 million Kenyans did not vote. And it means those Kenyans who did not vote, had they voted, would be having some leadership, not the one of Azimio or Kenya Kwanza, another leadership. So come out, vote, and make sure that your votes are concentrated on a team that believes in the future of Kenya. Otherwise, I strongly believe the best of Kenya is still to come.
Thank you both of you for joining this conversation this morning. Former ministers Sicily, Kariuki and Kipruto, Arap, Kirwa have been here with us this morning, pointing in directions perhaps in which we ought to be looking. Thank you so much for being candid as we talk this morning. The conversations continue because there's still a lot of work to be done, as we say.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for staying on. Good morning, everybody.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.